Hi, my name's Samuel Findlay, and you're listening to the ACES podcast. In this episode, I chat with Payal Mukherjee. Payal is an ear, nose, and throat surgeon and is an ACES collaborator. In our conversation, we chat about her career path as a surgeon, her background, being introduced to 3D printing, working with ACES, and much more. So, let's get to our conversation. So I'm chatting with Payal Mukherjee on today's podcast. Thanks for joining me, Payal.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
How's life for you at the moment during COVID-19?
Well, as an ENT surgeon, it is very interesting. You may not know, but with ENT surgeons, we're working in the nose and the airway a lot. So amongst all of the surgical specialties, we've actually been the worst affected in terms of risks to staff, to carers, to surgeons and patients as well. So our life as surgeons have been turned inside out, and we're trying to put the pieces together to get back to work because we're trying to minimise the collateral damage of COVID-19 on patients. So it's been a very interesting ride.
I bet. So I'm sure lots of extra precautions are being taken.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've really been, it's not just about taking the precautions, but we've really been faced with this thing that was foreign to us, which is resource limitation, limitation of PPEs, how do you provide care, how do you ensure safety, and it's been quite interesting having the collaborations with our scientific and engineering colleagues because, they really sort of jumped in the hour of need, being able to use 3D printing innovation, coming together to see, work in partnership with the people on the front line to use those innovations for a very practical and timely need.
So I want to get into your work with ACES in a moment, but first of all, I just want to go back to, I guess why you decided to become an ENT surgeon and study medicine to begin with.
Well, medicine the reason I chose medicine is, I had an interest in sciences, and I also had, I really like human contact. And as far as then, personal reasons, my grandmother was a big influencing factor in that as well. So my grandmother was brought up in an era where she really wanted to be a doctor, but being brought up in a time where India was going through partition and her sort of moving from what's now Bangladesh to what's now India, education was a rare commodity for a young girl at the time, and she didn't have the options that I did. So that was sort of the background in which I came into. But then I had my father and my brother are engineers. So coming from a very strong science background and enjoying the people contact, I sort of went from engineering into medicine and instead end up collaborating with engineers in research with ACES.
So when you started your medicine degree to begin with, did you always want to focus on, ENT, ear, nose and throat surgery, or was that something that developed over time during your studies?
I gravitated towards it because I found that, in the basic sciences that medicine is built on, sort of physiology, pathology, anatomy, I really enjoyed anatomy. I loved it. And the more difficult it was, the more I enjoyed it. So I always knew, and I actually taught anatomy in university once, even as a senior medical student. I was teaching it to the junior medical students. And therefore, when I got into my surgical terms, because I was so good at anatomy, I stood out when it came to anatomy questions, and surgeons love asking anatomy questions. So then, we had a term, a head and neck term, and of course that was my strength. So one of the surgeons sort of said, "Have you considered surgery? We need more women in surgery, and you have a knack for it." And that sort of started off my interest in head and neck surgery. And when I then graduated as an intern and did my internship and did head and neck terms, the head and neck surgeon said, "Look, in this career path, you can either go through ENT surgery, or you can go through general surgery, and they both do head and neck. So, think about ENT might give you more diversity in where you want to go, because you can work with the microscope if you're doing ear surgery, open surgery if you're doing, if you're in the neck, or endoscopes if you're doing nasal surgery. And I think, and it was also a time in ENT, and it still is actually, where it's because there's so much technology involved in ENT, it's constantly changing. And that really attracted me. So I think that then, led to me to this path of doing ENT.
So you've obviously studied for many years. You did a bachelor's degree, master's, and other degrees further than that. But you're also doing a PhD currently. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it stems from my frustrated but unfounded career path in engineering, and also my love for technology. I wanted to, I think at the background, I am a creative person. And when I see problems in my patients as a clinician, I'd like to be able to take it to the lab and work on solutions. But of course, being trained as a clinician, I have a limited set of skills. And that's what led me to collaborate with ACES, with Gordon, just towards working into collaborative projects looking at translational research. So starting off with an idea that really started off at the clinic, but taking it straight to the lab, to a project where you think, is this even feasible to apply new technologies, and then build it up and, ended back in the clinic.
So how have you found that collaboration with ACES, coming from that medical background, as you mentioned, engineering, and, you've got a bit of experience in that field too, but then also this world of bioprinting and 3D printing?
Well, mostly fun. You don't do anything that's not fun. But I think it really has helped unleash my creative juices, because I've found lots of creative people at ACES. And I think to be able to connect, different people with different interests and different skill sets. And, as you know, bioprinting has so many different skill sets involved. I think it's been it's been so much fun. And that's why I decided to then commit that to a PhD, because as a clinician, time is always your enemy. It runs away from you. There are many priorities on your time, and you always have to put your patients first. So if I didn't do it as a PhD, I couldn't protect time to it that I wasn't accountable to. I had to meet certain metrics, and that put a pressure on me to make sure it wasn't something that was happening in the background. We were also very lucky that for ENT in Australia, there is a funding body called the Garnet Pass and Rodney Williams Memorial Foundation that is dedicated towards innovation in ENT. And I was able to secure some funding from them, which also really helped me kickstart the project. So it wasn't just a concept. We knew that there were, there was feasibility at ACES to be able to start the fundamental research, and I had some funding backup. So it just meant that it was going to go. And if I didn't do it as a PhD, I couldn't do it as quick enough as I wanted to. So whenever you want to do something, you put lots of time pressures on it. So stressful, but it means that you achieve certain targets. And, I think the team at ACES work the same way, and they have also, provided so much funding support to be able to take it from discovery to the first stages of animal research within a course of, 3.5 years. I think that is an achievement. It doesn't happen very often.
So one of the projects you're working on with ACES is the ear cartilage regeneration project, and there's the 3D ALEC printer as well. How is that progressing?
Well, it's progressing really well. 3D ALEC not only lives, but also has made a debut in television on primetime news. And he or she, I used to call 3D ALEC a she first, but look, it. We want to be diverse. 3D Alex now being cloned, and there's a version now for the clinic, which is to be placed at RPA, and also at UOW we have a protocol derived. So now we're trying to make it user friendly, and so it's not just the engineers who build it at ACES, but it can be translated to the hospital, and people at hospital with less engineering, less knowledge into ALEC can actually be trained to use it. And that's so we've ALEC not only come into being, and now we're really testing that it is translatable in the sense that you can put it in a hospital and it can be used in a hospital by people in the hospital.
So you mentioned time earlier on. I'm curious, how do you manage and juggle all these hats? Because not only, are you a surgeon, you've got this collaboration with ACES, but you're also an associate professor at the University of Sydney, I believe.
Yeah, it is challenging. But I suppose, when you do that, you turn to your mentors and see how they do it. And one of the, when I knew very early on in my, when I graduated as an ENT surgeon and I came back from my fellowship from the UK, that I did want to have a research stream. So I had the benefit of having some amazing mentors. Some of them continue to supervise me in my PhD. And I looked at them and said, what do you do to be efficient? Because you have the same challenges. Is it even possible? And I found what they did was they protected time. They streamlined their day. So they would say, all my research commitments are going to be on this day. All my clinical commitments are going to be on this day. And I wasn't doing that efficiently. So I learned timetabling strategies. I also learned to build networks that would support it, so not to do it alone. And I think, when you do it in a group, when you do whatever you do in a group, it really helps build flexibility in what you can do. So, if you have to write a grant, you're not writing it alone. Someone's doing this part, someone's doing that part. You build on your strengths and work through things together to achieve the best out of every situation. So, I certainly think the thing that I've learned in research, which is different to clinical work. In clinical work, you're operating alone. You work in a team, but you're still leading that team. I think in research, you definitely have to do it as a group.
So just focusing on that position as Associate Professor at the University of Sydney, what does that exactly involve?
A lot of teaching and research and advocacy work. I'm also, for my joys, I've come in as chair of the New South Wales State Committee of the College of Surgeons right in the middle of COVID. It's challenging because it is a challenge. There are some serious issues to navigate, but all of these things that you wear, you may wear different hats. I think most surgeons wear a lot of hats. But what you find is that one aspect actually helps the other aspect of your life. So if I wasn't a researcher myself, I wouldn't know what challenges academic surgeons face, and therefore I wouldn't be able to take those issues to a committee to make sure that those issues are addressed. If I wasn't doing a PhD in 3D printing, I wouldn't be able to, I would know that there are regulatory issues that are, about to rock the 3D printing world, but I wouldn't be able to take it to the College of Surgeons and organise, to bring parties together, to bring TGA together, to bring decision makers together, policy makers together, and have a conversation about it, and then put my PhD hat on and get everybody together and write a paper about it and distribute it. So, we had awareness of those issues. I don't think, I think it certainly doesn't, it sounds like you're doing a lot more, and you are, but it almost makes you more efficient when you're, doing that. And the other thing that I have learned is that you may not necessarily succeed in one endeavor, but you certainly, all the journey of trying, the things that you learn in that journey, even in your failures, actually makes you a better person, a better researcher. Whatever you're doing, it actually informs your decision to make the next step. So it does grow you, and I don't think that people should take their failures as as necessarily something negative.
So how about life outside of work? What do you do in your downtime?
I'm a single parent. I don't think I have time.
If you have downtime.
Look, I really enjoy dancing. And at one stage, I really enjoyed art. I do enjoy art. I just have not had time to reconnect with it. But now when I look at that stuff, I go, did I really do that? So I'd really, once this PhD is over, I have some ambitions to try to, tinker my way into art as well. But I certainly, I do a lot of dancing. And I exercise. I stay fit as best as possible.
So something I've asked everyone that I've had on the podcast is whether or not they've got a morning routine or something that they implement every day to help them approach their work.
I endeavour to, but my weekdays, I am more able to do that on my weekends. But during my weekdays, it's just, whatever comes. Like some days I'm starting with a phone meeting at 6:30 in the morning and don't finish till 9 o'clock at night. Other days it's just a race to, get my daughter to school on time, and you just do what life throws at you during those weekdays. But you protect your weekend time to say, well, this is what this is my time. And this is what I'm going to do. So you timetable. You have to timetable that fitness in a time, in a calendar that works for you.
So if you weren't doing what you currently do for a living, what do you think you would be doing?
Probably be a dancer, I suppose. But I would find a way to incorporate science and art in some form or the other. So I wouldn't just dance, but I would find the science in dance and make a project out of that. I think I need a project in life to do it. So.
Sounds like it.
I'm working on something.
So I'm wondering if you could maybe offer some advice to someone who, maybe wants to go into similar sort of work as yourself, maybe medicine, or, wants to do a PhD.
Oh, look, for me at the outset of it, it was quite daunting. I didn't think I had the time, but coming at it at the other end, I certainly think that, things may seem daunting at the beginning, but if you are doing it for the right reasons and if your purpose is connected, then don't hold back. I think you only learn as much as you challenge yourself. And our system is built on flexibility. So you don't have to do things, there's lots of options becoming available in terms of doing part-time study or, part-time degrees. So if somebody wanted to do it, I certainly wouldn't, advise for them to hold back. As long as it's what you want to do and you're passionate about it, go for it. If you're not passionate about it and you're not sure, it does take a lot of your life. So, don't do something that you're absolutely, you think you're unsure about. And if you're not sure about it, you're just curious, then, go spend time with someone to find out a little bit more about it so you can make the most informed decision.
Now, I'm interested, like you've obviously had a very successful career so far, but I wonder if there's a highlight.
Having my giving birth as a mum, both as a doctor and a mother, it was probably the highlight. I mean, even now as a surgeon, when I walk through recovery and hear a new life that's, been born, I think there's nothing amazing to me than that being able to create life, and as a woman to be able to enjoy that, but also as a doctor to be able to see that, and now as a researcher to be able to engaging in regenerative medicine, nothing gives me more of a buzz than being able to see that that's possible. I think it's such a miracle, and I don't think anything would top that. No matter what you put on paper or what award you give from, that nothing would top that feeling.
Now, just to finish up, I'm wondering, you've mentioned this earlier in the podcast, but I'm wondering if there's any future plans you can maybe speak on, maybe with the ACES collaboration and the next step for the, 3D ALEC printer.
Well, it's just going strength to strength. I mean, that technology has not yet been put in patients, so that journey is not finished until that's where it started. So this is going to keep going until that journey is completed. Until the patients are benefiting from that research doesn't finish.
Great. Well, that brings us to the end of the podcast. Thanks so much for taking the time to have a chat. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the ACES podcast. For more episodes like this one, be sure to subscribe wherever it is you get your podcasts. You can also find more information about ACES on our website, electromaterials.edu.au. There you'll find links to our various social media platforms. And you can also follow me on Twitter @SamuelFindlay. Until next time, thanks for listening.